The term evidence probably comes to mind when thinking about a criminal trial. A man is accused of murder, and his lawyer brings up all kinds of evidence to prove why the accused man didn't actually commit murder. Maybe the man's DNA didn't match the crime scene, or he has a witness who says she was with him at a cafe at 4 p.m. right when the murder occurred. This evidence, or any available facts or information about the topic, is presented to the jury. Based on the evidence, the jury gets to decide if the accused man is guilty or not. You analyze evidence much the same way when you start the writing process, in order to come to a conclusion or develop your position on the issue. Then, the evidence you have gathered will be used to support any claims you make. However, there are many different types of evidence. In this video, I will discuss 5 common types of evidence that you will likely use in your writing. These 5 types of evidence include personal experience or anecdotes, expert opinions, statistics and other numbers, comparisons, and thought experiments. Let's look at personal experience and anecdotes first. Maybe you've been told never to use I in your academic writing, or not to talk about yourself. However, in writing for this class and many others, I encourage you to use personal experience, or something you did or experienced that relates to the topic, as an engaging way to introduce an idea or explain why you have the ethos or credibility to talk about it. So let's say I'm arguing in an essay that bicycling is the most fun type of transportation. That's my claim. I might offer some personal experience to support this claim. I could tell a brief story about how much fun I had taking my son on my bicycle to the park last Sunday, how I felt the wind in my hair as I steered down the street, and how I felt energized after pedaling a couple of miles. This is my own personal experience, but this anecdote, or short little story, from my life is a completely valid and appropriate way to support my claim that bicycling is fun. But in most cases, you don't want to stop at your own experience as evidence. Go to the experts to support your ideas, or these people who study or work in the field you are researching. As you make your claims, consider this. If a legitimate expert agrees with your point, it's probably valid. Let's take an example. Robert J. Schneider and Josie L. Willman are scholars with PhDs who conduct research about bicycling and transportation. In their research, Schneider and Willman found that, quote, walking and bicycling are more satisfying than using a personal automobile due to key travel characteristics. They avoid the hassle of traffic and cost of parking. I would probably quote Schneider and Willman's expert opinion to support my claim that bicycling is the most fun form of transportation. But keep in mind, too, that experts can also be those people who are just especially familiar with spaces. They don't necessarily have to have degrees or titles. For example, the student president of the Grizzly Cycling Club or a local bike mechanic could also be an expert on bicycles. I could interview one of them to get her expert perspective and a great primary resource. All right, number 3, statistics and numbers. Statistics are types of numerical data, often gathered through surveys or observation. Statistics and numbers are often the most common things people think about when they think about evidence, and these numbers are, in fact, great places to draw from. If I find research that states that 75% of people who ride their bikes to work enjoy their commute, then that's a great number I could use as evidence to support my claim that bicycling is the most fun type of transportation. Or maybe I could create my own survey and conduct some primary research myself. Either way, numbers are a good way to help prove a point. But don't just drop a number into your paper. Remember that you, as the writer, need to interpret and explain how that statistic supports your argument. Number 4, comparisons. If you can't find evidence on your specific subject, then you might draw a comparison to something like your subject to help clarify or explain your point. For example, if I'm arguing that people who text and drive should lose their licenses, I might draw a comparison between texting and driving and drinking and driving. This comparison would be useful because people already see drinking and driving as very dangerous. If I could prove that texting and drinking are similarly bad while driving, I might be able to prove to the reader that people who text and drive should lose their licenses. Comparisons are really useful when you're actually conducting research too, not just when you're writing. Let's say you're writing a paper about students who text and drive here at GGC. Maybe you can't find any information in the library databases about this problem at GGC specifically, but you could probably find some data on the problem at another college, like Georgia State or even the University of Minnesota. You could then draw a reasonable comparison between GGC and the information you found about the other college. Number 5, thought experiments. Thought experiments are more philosophical types of evidence, but they can be fun to come up with and really useful to help you prove your point. Thought experiments are just that. You do an experiment with your thoughts. In other words, use your imagination to investigate a topic, usually in narrative form. Done right, thought experiments can be an effective type of evidence. Let's go back to the claim that people who text and drive should lose their licenses. You could do a thought experiment leading people through the story of what would happen if a driver ran a red light because she was responding to her mother's text message. You might start off by saying, "Let's suppose." Then you could use a thought experiment to lead us through the rest of what you and the reader might reasonably imagine would happen, such as a car crash or a ticket. Remember, all these types of evidence can be used to help support your claim or position on a topic. However, you have to decide which type of evidence will be most convincing to your audience in every circumstance. I encourage you to use different types of evidence to prove your point, as it shows you've thought carefully about how best to convince your audience. And don't rely too heavily on just one type of evidence. A paper full of only thought experiments or only statistics usually isn't very convincing. Along those same lines, be sure to write sentences to explain to the reader why the evidence you're providing actually helps support your claim. Be sure to connect those dots as well.